Hi, I'm Joe Walensky. I'm the program manager for ConveyUX, which has been Seattle's annual user experience conference for the past 6 years. We're going into our 7th running, coming up March 11th, 12th, and 13th. And one of the fun things I get to do is talk to the many presenters. Today I'm talking to one of our feature speakers. We're excited to have at the event, Arif Gursel. Hello, Arif. How are you doing today?
Hey, Joe. Hey, world. How's it going?
Yeah, everything's great. I'm at the downtown Seattle offices of BlinkUX, which produces ConveyUX. Where are you talking to us from?
I am speaking to you today out of the Union, which is a co-working space run by my nonprofit, P.A.C.E.
Well, you're certainly involved in a lot of different activities, so why don't you talk a little bit about your background and some of those things that keep you busy every day?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in Chicago, raised in New York, went to school in the Deep South, and then ultimately relocated to Seattle. So I always say New York is who you can blame for my personality for the most part. And ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be an architect. Always kept my head in the sky, looking at buildings, drawing, sketching, doing things of that nature. It wasn't until about my sophomore, close to junior year of college that I decided to switch to computer science. And ever since then, I never looked back. I've worked for some pretty large and small companies. I came to Seattle, spent a 13-year career with Microsoft. After that, I got on the startup trail, started a few companies, lost a bunch of money, was able to sell a company, learned a lot there. Spent some time with Zillow, building out some of their real estate technology platforms. And now I'm the director of partnerships and product for Heroku, which is a cloud-based platform owned by Salesforce, a Salesforce company.
Well, I know you're also involved in a work that assists people in the community. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. After selling my company back in 2014, I started a nonprofit, P.A.C.E, which seeks to empower people of African descent in science, technology, entrepreneurship, arts, and media. And so we run a series of education workshops, platforms, basically bringing a startup type mentality to the nonprofit space. Having sat on many boards, I thought a lot of the models were starting to become a little antiquated. And so I wanted to use some of the classic toolkits that we have from product design, product management to fix social problems. So I look at transitioning from what was once a serial entrepreneur into a social entrepreneur, looking at how do I make the world a better place than I found it these days.
Well, I appreciate your efforts with that, and it's definitely important to have organizations like yours to keep moving us forward. The topic that you're going to be one of the feature speakers at our event, helping kick things off, and your topic is entitled From MVP to DVF, Aligning Product Development to True Customer Desire. So tell us a little bit about what that's all about.
Yeah, I think for me, having done product management for 20 years now, I still get surprised when I walk into rooms at small startups as well as large enterprise companies who simply don't understand their customer. They don't understand what they're building something for, and they don't spend time designing some kind of framework, some kind of guardrails to understand, like, who am I building something for? But I think more importantly, who am I not building something for? And I looked at, even my own execution could fall victim to that. I remember a few years back in one of our startups, we built a music discovery service, and literally the day of what was supposed to be our launch, I kind of held back because after our launch party, so many people came up to me in our launch party saying, hey, so what exactly is this thing, right? And in that, I realized that my co-founder that we had made a mistake. We hadn't really clearly articulated who we had built our solution for. We knew what we built, but we hadn't articulated who it was for, and more importantly, who it's not for. And so we took some steps back and realized that oftentimes I hear people talk about the MVP, which is the minimal viable product. But ultimately, I think it's more about the desirable, viable, and feasible product you want to get to for an intended audience, for a very specific customer. Because MVP would lead you down this path of, hey, let's just build these few things that in our head we think is minimal and gets us in that direction, but it isn't really validated against customer demand. Where you will do that, and then you spend too much time trying to then find the customer who wants that solution. Where for me, it's how do you look at who that's for in the first place and maybe not even build for it, right? And spend time engaging your intended customer to truly understand their needs, what they value, what they will find useful in the long term, and maybe finding solutions to problems that are not the intended solution, right? And you might find a different way of doing things. So, I plan to spend that time exploring some of the past, how I've used that framework to build products in the past, and how I'm even using that now in building products in the future, both in my nonprofit and social entrepreneurship, and how I also use that same approach at Heroku, which is a Salesforce company, to build a world-class platform.
Well, I suppose some of that dissonance between MVP and what you mentioned as DVF is probably challenging for some organizations, because that MVP often probably ties to that nugget that they think is their the source of all good things that are to come. But it may be that that's not really matching up with with the needs of the people that are out searching for a solution.
Or if you get used to operating in that model, you can get early successes that can mask a problem. And so you get too far down the road, and then you don't have a North Star for what's truly valuable to your customers, or furthermore, you don't understand when your customer segment may have changed, right? And so you spend a lot of time focusing on customer churn, where you might have evolved to a place where certain customers should churn because you're no longer serving them, and you should be focused on who your new customers are. And so we'll explore, some of those challenges in my talk, right? As you cross chasms of innovation and adoption, what was once for the early adopter may be different for mass market adoption and for growth and scale. And so really understanding that roadmap across the life cycle of a product, I think is super important for those who create it.
Well, one of the reasons we're pleased to have you involved, especially with this talk, is because a lot of people in the user experience community often feel that they don't have enough of a voice, and essentially a lot of things come downstream, and they're really reacting, and so a lot of us want to get more involved in those product level decisions earlier on to bring our expertise in there. And so I think there's opportunities for us to learn to improve in that area.
Yeah, as you should be. I think, I'm funny. I always say I got into technology through experience. And so starting my life off as a designer, I'm still very much a designer. It's things that people don't actually know about me, right? Like I spend as much time in Creative Cloud as I probably do Visual Studio Code. But starting my life off as a designer focused on structures, buildings, houses, for me, that's experience, right? Like you are trying to create a physical experience. Moving into software for me was not much of a shift in my mind. It was more about digital experience, right? And so my agency, Vibe Heavy, was always trying to figure out how do we find that sweet spot of physical and digital interaction and experience? Like how do you actually move people from digital engagements back to physical spaces? And so as I progressed along in my career in technology, I never lost sight of what I've always targeted to do as a designer, right? Which is engage people and have intuitive, simple solutions that people don't need to read, manuals for, like you should really be able to pick up a thing and know how to use it. And I truly feel that way about any product or service that I use. Like, hopefully it's intuitive enough that I can just pick it up and go. When I first got into technology, I started my career at Microsoft in QA. And back then, as a software test engineer, your job was to break it as a user before it got into the world, right? And so progressing from there into development and then into product management, I've never lost sight of the experience side of this, where I have peers and counterparts who've never walked that journey, so they don't truly understand the customer journey and the customer impact from putting a bad feature out. Like, there's a rapport you can lose with me if you put too much crap in front of me, right? Like I won't trust you in the future to go back into that experience. And I don't think people truly understand that. They think, well, it can be crappy over time and it'll get better and we'll get that person. But you've lost a large amount of people with that experience. And so I'm a product manager. As a director of product, I've had design report to me. I've often been the person at a company writing the first design, writing the first personas, or coming up with, how we'll do design sprints along with our product sprints. I believe in doing design sprints before I build product. I believe in learning through design before we learn through development. It's more costly to learn through development. It's quicker to iterate and learn through design. And we can learn so much before we write a single line of code if we have an approach where we understand the value of doing so.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts and taking the time to do this preview with me, and we'll look forward to having you at the conference in March.
Super excited. Can't wait to do it. Thanks, Joe.